The goal of the five-year plan was to modernize Soviet industry. Joseph Stalin claimed that the USSR was 50 to 100 years behind the West, and if that they could not make it up with this gap within 10 years, the West would bury them. He was somewhat right. The five-year plan was Stalin's method of modernizing the country industry. New dams, electricity, new roads, new steels and metal plants were created. New mines were sunk and new canals were dug. Economically, they were a success, enabling the Soviet Union not to feel the effects of the Great Depression. In fact, they were able to benefit from it, as they needed machinery and the expert operators to train their workers. The West was keen to sell them the machines, and operators were able to go to the USSR to work on the machines. Politically, the five-year plans were a success. They consolidated Stalin's position as supreme leader, and they were ideologically more Marxist than their previous policy, the new economic policy, which pleased many in the party. Socially, the results are mixed. Initially, there was a great enthusiasm for them, as many people volunteered to work on the grand projects. The country was electrified, and many new jobs were created, but political prisoners were used as workers on many of them, notably the Bruno Canal, and many people died as a result. As the continual use of the five-year plans proved to be catastrophic, the global economy changed rapidly after World War II. But the Soviet Union didn't. It was still producing plans based on the realities of the 1930s and the 1940s. Consumer goods were not a priority, heavy industry was always favored, and food supply networks were not expanded or developed, causing shortages and queues in the 1980s, undermining people's faith in the system.
The Soviet regime introduced the first five-year plan in 1928, which was maintained by the Gosplan. This plan focused on rapid industrialization and initiated the collectivization of agriculture. Among other orders, Stalin demanded a 200% increase in iron production and 335% increase in electrical power, and set his laborers to work with firm restrictions. Prisoners carried out much of the labor, as they were cheap and in large supply. Factory managers documented lateness, absenteeism, and bad workmanship for each worker. If a worker was found guilty of treason for any of these reasons, he could be shot or sent to forced labor on the Baltic Sea Canal or the Siberian Railway. In the Soviet Union, workers constructed dams, roads, railways, and canals, which all helped to expand industry and manufacturing. In the agricultural sector, Stalin's introduction of collectivization essentially destroyed the class of kulaks, or wealthy independent farmers who gained their status from the Stalin reform in 1906. Collectivization led to the starvation or death of many kulaks, and some slaughtered their animals to rebel against being forced to give them up to the government. The Soviet regime treated the kulaks with hostility, and Stalin forced the deportation of approximately 1 million kulak households. Hundreds of peasants were forced to work on groups of small collective farms known as the kolkhozy, meaning Russia under Stalin. The government required the peasants to sell a large portion of their crops to the state at a low price, and allow them to keep or sell whatever surplus they accumulated. Although factory output soared as a result of the first five-year plan, agricultural production was damaged. In 1932, grain production was 32% below average, which resulted in widespread famine. Nonetheless, Stalin's first five-year plan may be considered successful, as it contributed toward making the Soviet Union a leading industrial nation. For the second five-year plan, Stalin expanded the goals of his previous plan and placed an emphasis on heavy industry. This plan aimed to advance the Soviet Union's communication systems, especially railways, which improved in both speed and reliability. The second five-year plan failed to reach the level of success of the previous plan, as it did not reach the goal production levels in the coal and oil industries. This plan incorporated newer methods of increasing production, including incentives, punishments, and the introduction of childcare, which motivated mothers to work and further contributed to the plan's success. The second five-year plan initiated a lower standard of living, as consumer preferences were disregarded and focus shifted toward military goods and heavy industry. The lower availability and quality of consumer goods hurt the economy. The third five-year plan lasted for only 3 years, as it was interrupted by Germany's declaration of war on the Soviet Union during World War II. As war seemed imminent, this plan focused on the production of weapons and other wartime materials. The Soviet Union mainly contributed resources to the development of weapons and constructed additional military factories as needed. Stalin continued to implement additional 5-year plans in the years following World War II in an attempt to keep his promise in 1945 to make the Soviet Union the leading industrial power by 1960. By 1952, industrial production was nearly double the 1941 level. Stalin's 5-year plans helped transform the Soviet Union from an untrained society of peasants to an advanced industrial economy.